Hello again, I am Blunty. If you already knew that, you may have seen yesterday's video I put up coming out, essentially. And it still feels weird to use that term to describe what I was talking about in yesterday's video, but I guess it applies. So it turns out, if you skipped that video or haven't got around to it yet, short version is, I had a sudden realization thrust upon me to start examining some of my previous personal relationships, and it turns out that what I thought I was, in regards to the spectrum of sexual identity and things like that, is not what I actually am. And I'm still actively sorting through a lot of the relationship possibilities and interactions I've had with various people over the years to really sort of hone in on whether I'm heteroromantic demisexual or panromantic demisexual, because some of that video yesterday was very heavily scripted, so I said the things I wanted to say and said them in the way I wanted to say them. Some of it was ad-libbed, so I'd go off script a little bit and just... and some of the stuff in the video occurred to me as I was saying it, which is causing that question about the pan-romantic side of things. But this video isn't about that. This video is about a couple of comments I got on that video. They weren't mean-spirited, you know. They weren't meant as attacks or anything like that. They were, in fact, reflecting an opinion I used to have many years ago. And it's around the issue of the loud gays, basically. The flamboyant, the, hey, look at me, I'm super gay, that kind of stuff, but, you know, across the entire spectrum. But it tends to be targeted at the gays the most, for some reason. I'm not sure why. Are they particularly louder? Are they more flamboyant? Is it more noticeable because they don't conform to the typical, you know, idea of masculinity when they are being sort of flaming or particularly flamboyant? And, you know, hashtag not all gays are like that. But, you know what I'm getting at, right? The reaction to that, the reaction that boils down to the statements like, you know, I don't care if you're gay, just don't shove it down my throat. Or stop shoving your sexuality down my throat. Or you know, the forced inclusion we're seeing in television and movies these days, and checking off diversity, you know, check boxes. Make sure you have a gay, make sure you have a lesbian, make sure you have this and a black person and that, and some, you know, Hispanic there somewhere. And, you know, people are reacting to that in negative ways, feeling that it's being thrust upon them, that the political ideology, that a leftist political ideology, I can't say the word, this one, is being thrust upon them. And sort of in relation to that general attitude came the thing about, you know, in yesterday's video, who cares what your labels are? Just you do you, and as long as it makes you happy, as long as you're not hurting anyone else, just do it over there, and you don't have to make videos about it. You don't have to wave a flag. You don't have to tell people all the time about it. And I used to have that same sort of attitude, in that, you know, it wasn't intended as mean spirit. It wasn't like, shut up, gays. We know you like dick. Fine. Shush, lesbians. I like the same thing you like, but I've got different equipment. It's fine. We understand each other. Shh. Just get on with your life. And I thought the reason I was saying that, it wasn't intended to be mean-spirited, but it was. Like, on the other end of that, I can see now it was, you know, quite bitter and mean. But my intent was to try and communicate, and clear communication is another issue I suffer with because of different things that I am, mainly on the autistic spectrum, and emotional communication is not one of our strong suits. But what I was trying to say is I was trying to communicate, and what I used to say is true acceptance of, you know, the entire rainbow spectrum, whether you're straight or, you know, whatever the most extreme version of that is on the other end. You know, however you want to categorize that, whatever it is, the only true acceptance is if people go, I don't care, because that means it doesn't matter. You know, you can be you and they don't care, and it's fine, and everything. They don't judge you based on it. They don't treat you differently based on it. They just shrug and move on with their life. And I thought that was the goal for acceptance. But then the more and more I spoke about my mental health issues, so separate from sexuality now, although sometimes intertwined in various ways, and we'll get onto that later in the video if you like, or in a separate video, I don't know yet, because I'm ad-libbing this all. But as I started to talk more and more openly about my mental health issues, and my being on the high-functioning autistic and having bipolar disorder, I was speaking more and more about that. You know, no dedicated videos, just in live streams or off the cuff, or I'd make reference to it in other videos, and suddenly I'd start seeing comments coming in from people going, oh, you too. I would have never have guessed. You seem so functional. You seem to get around it very. And they start asking you for advice and tips, and because they can relate to it, and they're having struggles with their life, and seeing someone else out in the world, I guess, getting shit done, gives them a little bit of hope that there is a path for them to integrate into society in some sort of useful way, rather than feeling so isolated and alone, and just nobody gets them. And I used to feel that way myself. I was diagnosed very late in life. I was in my mid-20s before I was diagnosed with bipolar and high-functioning autism. And that's very late for that kind of diagnosis. And my childhood and my formative years would have been wildly different if I had known. And especially if the things, like YouTube and social media were out there where I could see more easily because, we damn sure weren't being represented in movies and TV, much like, the Rainbow Brigade weren't being properly represented in TV and movies back then either. So I had very little idea about what the full spectrum of that experience would have been like. And so then I thought, well, being in your face about various issues like mental health, like sexuality, like gender identity, like, any of these hot button issues, I thought, well, it's obviously it's about awareness. It's about just showing people that, this thing is out there. It's about getting the message out. And that wasn't quite it either. So then I thought, well, maybe it's about education. Maybe it's about informing other people that aren't part of that, what this experience is like, and how to help deal with people like this, and don't run off with the wrong idea. The classic Hollywood cliche of the screeching autist banging their head against the wall and things like that. I mean, there are extremes of the autism spectrum that do lead to behaviors like that, but high-functioning autism's not quite that. So I went through these phases. Is it about acceptance? Is it about awareness? Is it about relatability? Is it about just exposure in general? Just reminding the normals out there that there are different experiences that people go through. And it is all that to some extent. I know personally that there is lots of stuff that I've learned about, the other experience that, I don't personally have, that has made it more easy for me to relate to other people. And again, emotional, connection is very difficult for someone on the high function autism spectrum to begin with. So the more I'm exposed to it, the more I see that, the more I can pull from that to try and find a path to relate to these people and treat them like people, instead of seeing them as symptoms or, a series of behaviors that are, it's real hard to talk about this in a clear manner. I hope I'm making sense. But it turns out it's none of that. And I started to get a clue about this only this year, really. Again, talking more and more openly about my mental health stuff, and spending more and more time talking about it, instead of just saying, oh, I have trouble with doing this because of, this mental issue or whatever. And people go, oh yeah, me too. And then I'd move on. I wouldn't really pull it apart or dig into it or anything like that. I was just sort of being open about that being part of me, instead of trying to hide it, trying to mask it, trying to suppress it, trying to overcome it, trying to present as normal. So when I do make content about whatever I'm making content about, people pay attention to the content and don't think, or, I don't see it through a filter of, well, that's Blunty, he's this, this, and this. That I don't want that part of me getting in the way of the story I'm trying to tell, or the product I'm trying to review, or whatever it is. But in particular, yesterday's video has really cemented the idea of, it's about exposure and education and dispelling ignorance and relatability and all that kind of stuff. But more than anything else, it's about shared experience. And that sort of falls under relatability, but it's a little bit deeper than that. It's about sharing in detail more of the experience. And I did share in detail, a lot of what led me to coming out as, or my self-realization that I'm demisexual, and sort of talking about the path I took to get there, was more important than just going, hey, I'm demisexual, this is what a demisexual is, and just sort of giving a definition and go, well, I feel this way. Talking about the path I took to get there, the self-realization, the different aspects of it that all sort of started to fit together under their own gravitational pull, until there was a brand new world of, oh, well, this part of my personal solar system, sorry, I'm making this metaphor up as I go, this part of my solar system goes right there. Oh, and look, it makes perfect sense. It's in a perfect little orbit, and now all the other orbits start to make sense as well. That was the piece that was missing. Can't wait to find more pieces. But talking about that path to get where the realization was, I found out that is a tremendously important part of that shared experience, because a lot of people out there were latching on to the entire story, or this part of the story, or this bit, but not this, and helping other people in the way that I was helped. When someone else said, "Hey, have you noticed this about yourself? You should look into it." And I did, and I found something else wonderful about myself. But in sharing that experience from my point of view, I've also done that for other people, which is brutally fulfilling in a way. It's you know, I've done a little part just to help a few people out there start figuring themselves out a little bit more, or just considering themselves. I mean, maybe it changes their consideration of who they are, maybe it doesn't. But the point is, they're thinking about it, they're self-examining. And I've always, my entire life, been a big proponent of self-reflection, self-examination, because I had a very significant event in high school, which, you know, I took hold of my life and did a 180 and turned it all around, and started making tremendous efforts to be the person I wanted to be, rather than just fall into the not particularly great example of humanity that I was becoming. But something happened, there was a trigger point, and I went, uh-oh, better take a look at myself. And when I looked at myself, I saw things I didn't like, and I saw a path I was on I didn't like, so I did something about it. And the resources for that kind of self-realization, and later on in my 20s, the resources for you know, finding others who had shared experiences of you know, the bipolar stuff I was going through, or the you know, high functioning autism stuff I was going through. You know, YouTube didn't exist, social media didn't really exist when I was in my early 20s. The internet sure did, but you know, it was a bunch of, you know, isolated forums and stuff. So finding those little mini communities, if they were out there at all, was tremendously difficult. It was just a very different internet back in those days. These days, and I think this is why we're seeing more of these stories out there, there are kids growing up with this, you know, hyper-connected sharing culture. You know, it's become part of who they are to just share their experiences. And that has led more and more of these kids out there, these 20-somethings out there, to get a clue on who and what they are much, much earlier in life, which, you know, is tremendous. Because, again, the stuff I went through throughout my 20s, trying to figure my shit out on my own, it wasn't easy. Still not easy. And so the next time you think that someone's oversharing, or, you know, they should shut up and, you know, I get it, you're gay or you're bi or whatever, just keep it to yourself. I'll be over here doing my own thing. You do your own thing over there. I'm fine with it. I don't have anything against it. I just don't be all in my face about it. Think about that from a non-selfish point of view, because there are some people out there who might need that in their face so they can figure themselves out and lead a happy, fulfilled, complete life, where they understand themselves and they comprehend the way they relate to other people. You know, they've got a context for their own thoughts and feelings. And that's a word I've been using a lot over the last couple of days as well. This demisexuality thing has given me such a precise blade of context to carve up so much stuff that I've been through, gone through, experienced, related to other people. And with this new blade of context, I can make super clean cuts through all that and really examine it and really understand it and fold it in to who I am in a way that never made sense before. I tried to examine it through the lens of, you know, the bipolar stuff, or the, you know, high functioning autism stuff. And that never quite fit. It never brought it into focus. But the lens, or the knife, or whatever metaphor I'm using now, the planetoid of the demisexuality stuff, that was another lens that I needed to bring other parts of me into focus. And if life has a point, it's to understand yourself and how you relate to those around you. You know, that's the meaning of life as far as I'm concerned. So anytime I get another tool to help me more specifically filter the world from outside into me, and from me into the outside world, the happier I am. And if I can help anybody else out there, one person, you know, if one person gets anything out of, you know, talks like yesterday's video, it's worth, you know, annoying someone else who was like, oh, don't be in all my face about your demisexuality, you deviant. Why aren't you as lusty as I am? Isn't it? Nobody said that to me, but I'm exaggerating to try and drive the point home. So thank you again for listening. I probably will be doing more videos about this. Probably not back to back to back to back to back. I do want to do my regular videos as well, of course, because there's a lot of exciting video game stuff coming up. But, you know, maybe once a week, maybe once a month, maybe we do this on the regular basis and we just talk about one of these issues just to get it out there and just share a bit. I don't know. I've always been a bit lousy about turning ideas into series of videos, but you might see more of this stuff. If you have any questions, you know where to put them. Thank you for watching. Thank you as always to the patrons up there. You mean a lot to me. I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time. Now, I'm going to spend the rest of my day thinking about the people I've been interested in and how many of them weren't necessarily chicks. So it just might be pan-romantic, and I don't know yet. I need to figure that one out.